Right now we're going to be graphing trig graphs, actually physically on a graph. And, you know, there's many ways to go about it, and of course if you have different ways, please do. But this, I like to use my dapper method because it's very dapper. I hope I'm using the word right. Okay, so I like to figure out my D first, which, as you realize, is the midline. And y equals whatever D was, and that makes your midline. The A is your amplitude. That means how high or low it gets, right? And then if there's the amplitude, then it also tells you if it's positive, then there's no reflection. And if it's negative, there is a reflection. So you know here, with no reflection, cosine starts at the max, and sine starts at the midline and goes up. If there is a reflection, okay, if it was negative and there was a reflection, cosine starts at the min, and sine starts at the midline always, but it goes down first. Okay, and you'll see what I mean when we do it. Okay, P is your period. That's important to know. How long it takes to make one complete cycle. And then we use that to find our interval. Now, I call this interval, you know, you can call it whatever you want. It's simply your period divided by 4. And that gives us the 5 points that we need to create a graph. And then R is the range. I like to figure out what my max is and my min, because that's what the range is, right? So remember, the max is just your positive amplitude plus the midline, and min is your negative amplitude plus the midline. If you know, be technical, it's this one's always positive, that one's always negative, no matter what A is. All right, so my dapper, let's get all dapper. D, A, P, I. Okay, D, midline, y equals -2. So it's going to be low, this graph. It also helps us actually figure out where to put it on the graph. A is, well, it's -2. So that means that there's been a reflection. You know, it's cosine, it's sine, so you know it's starting at the midline and going down. The period, 2 pi over b. There it is. So it takes 2 pi over 3 to make one complete cycle. So the interval is 2 pi over 3 divided by 4. So remember, when I do this, it's keep, change it to, this is division signs, change that to multiplication, and then flip the 4. So it becomes 2 pi over 12, or pi over 6. Okay, and we're going to talk about what that means. That's the only thing we haven't really gone through because we haven't needed to until now. So the max, okay, you take the amplitude, the positive of the amplitude. I don't know why it does that, sorry. The positive of the amplitude, which is 2, and add the midline, so it's 0. And the min is negative the amplitude plus, that. So it's -4. All right, so you know the range is -4 to 0. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to graph this, and we're going to use the 5 key points. There's 5 key points, and those were the points that when we unwound this, that were on the unit circle. So that was the max, the min, and 0. So this is how this works. First thing, I see my midline is at -2. The highest possible value I'm going to have is 0, and the lowest is -4. Okay, so I am going to take this and make it so that I have a ruler. I'm not sure this is actually going to work here. Oop, can't do that. Okay, I'm just going to fake it. You have rulers, use them. You see your interval here for x, you know it's got to be somewhere, you got to go back and forwards. So I need to put this x-axis, or the y-axis, kind of in the middle. I'm sure I have lines here, but it would take me forever to figure that out. Okay, and then I know that my max is 0, so I know I should put my x-axis up here, because most of my graph is going to be in the negative area. So this is my x-axis, this is my y-axis. And we had to do all that work to figure out actually where to place it. Okay, so I know that my midline is at y equals -2, and the lowest it possible goes is 4. So this is going to be -1, this is -2, so this is where my midline is. I like to keep track of that. And my it's going to go down to -4 and up to 0. So it's going to go up to the x-axis and down to -4. Now, the 5 key points are going to be involving the interval. So what it means is the first one is always 0. Okay, that's where we start on the y-axis. And then the second one is pi over 6. The third one is 2 pi over 6. So we just count. And I count till I get to pi. Pi is going to be 6 pi over 6. So 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, etc. So you can reduce these. I suggest you do. So this one is pi over 3. This one is 2 pi over 3. And this one is just plain old pi. So when I put these on the x-axis, you know I need I need that many. 1, 2, 3. So pi over 6. This one is pi over 3. 3 pi over 6 is pi over 2. And etc. all the way to pi. Now we're also doing it the same exact thing but backwards. I hope that made it to pi. I really actually didn't count there. So negative pi over 3, pi over 2, 6, 4 pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6. Okay, labeling each one isn't necessary, but you do have to label the pieces. You know, each unit, so we know exactly where you are. So now, we're going to graph. We're going to decide, all right, this is a sine graph. So as I said before, sine starts at the midline here. So the very first spot you're going to do for sine is right where it hits the y-axis at the midline, always. Now I know it's negative. I know that that was negative, so that means the next point I'm going to go down is to the minimum. It's going to go down. So these are the spots where each of the point goes, and you simply make the pattern that every sine graph has. So it goes, since it's negative, we go down, and then we just go in the middle, then up, so down, and each one of these little hash marks is another spot that you move. So then we go the middle, down, up. So this is half of the curve that I need. Because I'm going to pi and negative pi. So I need to just finish that up. And now we just finish the pattern. So this one is here, so now it goes up to the maximum, middle. I just got to make sure, sometimes I like to put hash marks there just so I can see where I'm supposed to go. Minimum, middle, max, middle. And we just draw as best we can. It's curvy, so make it curvy. All right, that's how you graph a sine curve, any sine curve or any cosine curve. There's a lot of stuff involved, but you need to, do all the pieces to make it look right. All right, this one, we're going to just do a cosine graph, so you have that. Now this one in particular says just graph one cycle, so that means we just need the 5 points. One cycle is 5 points, starting at the y-axis. All right, dapper, D, A. Okay, D is 2. A is 3, and it's positive, so no reflection. So since it's cosine, it's going to start at the max. The period is 2 pi over 8. So it's 2 pi over B. So that is, remember it's keep, That's the same. Change this line to multiplication and flip. So those cancel out, and we're left with 16. 16 is my period, so my interval is 16 over 4. There we go. The range is the max. The highest value it's going to be is positive 3 plus 2. And the min, negative 3 plus 2. So the interval that we're going to be doing here, and we're starting at 0. You always start, if they say 1 cycle, they do mean starting with 0. It's understood. The interval is, so I can do it right here. That's my y-axis. My max is 5. So I know I need to have it go a little higher there than I did on the last one. That's good. Since the max was 5, I need more space up here at the top. So we're going to go down to negative 1. That's the lowest it's going to be. And it's going to go up to 5. 5 is its highest. So you should label to make sure. The interval was 4, so you can spread it out to 4 as long as there's enough boxes. So this is 4, 8, 12, and 16. That's where all of your key points are. So from there, we draw our sine curve. I'm sorry, this is a cosine curve. I know the midline was at, what, 2? Yeah, the midline was at 2. So I'm just going to, I like to give myself a spot there so I know that that's where the middle point is always going to be. This is cosine. There's no reflection, so it always starts at the max. And then it follows the same pattern. It goes max, middle, minimum at each of the interval points. So I just went to the minimum. Now I'm going to go to the middle. Now I go back to the max. So this is how cosine looks. And that's it. All right. Let's try it ourselves. See ya.